Hello, I'm Ronnie Eldridge. Welcome to Eldridge and Company. The question is, why can't we find the way to provide all children a quality public education? My friend Dan Feigelson has spent more than 30 years trying to do this. He's been a teacher, a principal, district superintendent, staff developer, and curriculum writer in the New York City school system. Now he's an international literacy consultant, speaking at conferences, leading institutes, workshops, and lab sites on the teaching of reading and writing, and he's my guest today, so welcome.
Thank you, Ronnie.
I was really impressed when the other day a judge in Connecticut ruling, as many judges do around the country, about the unconstitutionality of the financing of school districts. But he went beyond that and mentioned achievement gaps and also teacher assessments and evaluations. And he just said the system was broken. What do you think?
I think he's right. I'm not sure I agree with all of his criteria, or I don't know that I'm on the same page as he is in terms of the reasons why that's so. This whole conversation about the achievement gap is something that urban school districts in particular have been talking about for decades. You know, it's absolutely been the focus of the New York City Department of Education for a very long time, and I think charter schools have been in some ways a reaction to that. But I think you have to approach it from the point of view, first of all, of the teachers in the room. The education's not going to improve, and the achievement gap is not going to be addressed if you don't have quality teachers for all children. So this question of teacher assessment, in some ways, I think is actually misleading, because there's a real contradiction in the field. Many school districts, New York City and elsewhere, take the point of view that they're going to the lowest common denominator. You can't trust teachers to make informed decisions, so let's bring in one-size-fits-all programs where teachers don't particularly have to think, because you never know if you're going to get the best teacher in the world or someone just out of school who's not so good. So if your approach in the first place is that teachers can't be trusted to make decisions, and you treat the teaching profession as a quasi-professional arena, the achievement gap won't be addressed and schools won't improve. The main difference between schools that do well and schools that parents want to send their children to are the teachers in the room. And I think teacher education is really what has to be addressed rather than teacher assessment. You can't put the cart before the horse. Yeah.
And how many schools do you have that teach teachers and have them graduate? What do you need to be a teacher?
Well, you need a teaching degree. Different states have somewhat different criteria, but teachers typically go to some sort of teacher education program at a teaching college. In New York City, within a very short span of time, once you begin teaching, you also need a master's. So most states typically require teachers to get a master's within the first few years.
So should we go to the curriculum of schools?
Yes. Yeah. I feel like... sorry?
No, it's so interesting. Is Common Core, what is Common Core?
Okay. So Common Core is a reaction to the situation we had in the past where every state had a different set of standards. So hypothetically, you could get a passing grade in Connecticut and then move 5 miles, 5 miles east or west into Massachusetts and be failing, but do the same level of work.
The reason I ask that is that it sounds like we need Common Core for schools of education, teaching the teachers.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. The Common Core issue is another one that I have some mixed feelings about. I actually think that the Common Core as a document is not a bad document. There needed to be a common set of criteria, right? And two, in terms of literacy, which is my area, most state standards in the past didn't address the issue of text complexity. That is, state standards would say, here's what kids need to know and be able to do as readers or writers. let's just say readers for now, but it didn't say at what level of text difficulty. So it's one thing to be able to, let's say, make an inference about theme, in a Beezus and Ramona book, and it's another thing to be able to make an inference about theme in Of Mice and Men, right?
Yeah.
Depending on the level of text.
Right.
So the Common Core actually addresses that, but I guess I've always been the kind of person who, maybe it's a personality flaw, I always think in terms of the worst possible way something can be used. And I think one of the big flaws of the Common Core is its implementation, less in the document itself than in the implementation.
So does that come back to the administration of the education system, or again, as a teacher?
I think it's more the administration, the powers that be. Since the Common Core does define, here's the level of text complexity or text difficulty kids should be working at in 5th grade or 7th grade, whatever, they start, creating requirements that 5th grade classrooms can only use texts at that level of difficulty, which is all well and good, but what if you have kids who are reading at a 2nd grade level? They don't magically become better readers just because you put a 5th grade level text in front of them. So, the Common Core, I think, did something very important in defining where kids should be at these particular age levels. But it doesn't say, and it would be silly to say that just by forcing kids to look at texts that are too hard for them, they're going to become better readers. I could do a passable job of reading a passage to you in French, but I wouldn't know what it was talking about.
It's interesting, because what you're really saying is the basis of the education system is the teacher, the quality of the teacher.
Absolutely.
And so then you have to go to, how did that teacher learn to be a teacher, right?
Yeah.
And so then you have the argument of local control, independent, all that. I mean, there's a need then for some regulations or some standards, not regulations, standards, nationally.
Well, and typically how teachers are assessed, and one of the big controversies out in the field, and I think what happened in Connecticut is there have been all these discussions of whether teachers should be assessed according to the test scores of their students.
Well, you had that in New York.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a very big deal here. And I do think that standardized test scores are one piece of data that should be looked at. But again, before you start assessing the results of teachers teaching, I think you need to think about building up their diagnostic capability. I feel like the big thing missing in teacher education is any attention or enough attention paid to kid watching. How do you sit with this child, talk to them about a book or observe them reading or writing, and understand where their strengths are, what they're struggling with, and, find that entry point. So, you would never go to a doctor who had used a prepackaged diagnostic program, right? Doctors are trained, in depth on how to ask questions and how to observe and how to examine to make the appropriate diagnosis, right? Somehow in most schools of education, teachers are taught at pedagogical techniques, which is a good thing, right? They're taught about standards, they're taught about all sorts of things, but very little attention is paid to developing their diagnostic capability. And if you don't have thinking teachers who can make decisions, you're kind of doomed before you start, right?
Yeah. So that takes you also then to the importance of class size.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, certainly, it's your child's in a much better situation if they get more teacher attention. But again, and maybe this is a controversial thing to say, but I would rather have a highly skilled teacher, good at kid watching, with good diagnostic skills, in a class of 35 than a subpar teacher in a class of 20.
Yeah. It's so interesting.
Yeah.
So you're a literacy consultant, and it's more than reading. I mean, it's more than just reading and writing. What is it?
It's about critical thinking. It's about teaching kids to come up with their own idea. What I have been Well, my latest work is really about,
book.
in this book, Reading
Yeah,
Projects
great,
Reimagined,
yeah.
is urging teachers to consider the balance between time spent on end-year expectations, that is, what every fourth grader should know and be able to do, what every fifth grader should know and be able to do, and teaching kids to come up with their own ideas about what they're reading. Actually, this book was inspired by my daughter Sonia, now 23, who at the age of 9 came home from school one day and just slammed down her backpack in disgust and said, "Dad, I hate reading response." And for me, this was sort of
What does
alarming.
that mean?
Well, reading response, where you read a passage and typically you get some sort of comprehension question you have to answer. How most of us were
It's
taught
like on the
reading.
tests that you take.
Yeah. So sometimes it's a multiple choice thing, sometimes it's a short answer response. But Sonia was always the kind of kid who loved to read. She always had a book, she always had something to say about the book. So when she said she hated reading response, I was taken aback, right? And I said, but you love to read, you always have opinions about books, so how could you hate reading response? I would think it would be your favorite thing. And she said, well, listen to this. And she pulls this page out of her backpack, and in her best boring adult voice, she reads out loud, why did the fairy hide the key? What does this story tell us about friendship? And then she flings the paper down and says, well, Miss Sims, that's a great reading response, but it's your reading response. It's not what I want to think about.
Oh, that's interesting.
So this got me thinking, from the mouths of babes,
Yeah.
that she has a point. We spend so much time telling kids what to think. And so much comprehension instruction is about clever questions coming from the teacher or from packaged programs. What about some balance between that stuff, teaching the grade content, and teaching kids to recognize, name, and extend their own lines of thinking? It's a little bit similar to what I'm talking about with teachers, where I think they should be able to be pedagogical decision makers. I want kids to be comprehension decision makers, and I think that sort of teaching looks different than the teaching we employ when we're teaching the end-year expectations, when we're teaching the straight-ahead content. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I understand that.
In a certain way, it's a little more like coaching and scaffolding.
Right, it's developing thinking and imagination and all the creative things you want to have, right?
Well, it's sort of the opposite of compliance-driven instruction, where I'm giving you a question about the text you just read, and there is a right answer. Right. It's a little bit more approaching reading comprehension as a journey rather than as a destination.
I know Sonia's frustration because sometimes when you take some test or something, you come out with a different point and you don't find that answer. That point is an alternative, as one of the answers. Right.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. Yeah.
So I think that sort of instruction would go a long way toward improving student achievement. But it's interesting, and this gets into some dicey politics because one of the situations we have here in New York and elsewhere really are the influx of charter schools and the whole controversy as to whether they are actually serving the poor populations that they mostly
Did you work for it?
I briefly worked at a charter school, yeah.
Right. Was it brief? Because
it was brief for a number of reasons that it would probably be impolitic to discuss, but it was very disturbing how compliance-driven the instruction was. I think it's interesting because in New York, Harlem Success, Eva Moskowitz's schools have become very controversial. And I'm sure you know about that viral video of the teacher berating the first grader and all that. But
it's behavior also.
It's
behavior control. It's control.
Yeah, it's instruction where I think of it as compliance-driven instruction. I actually observed in one of those schools a while back. I guess I could get in trouble for saying this, but and over 2 hours observing in classrooms, I didn't see a kid make a single decision on their own. Kids, it was very orderly. Kids sat in rows. No one was calling out, but pretty much every utterance coming from a student was an answer to a teacher's question. Very right answer driven. a little disturbing. You know,
Yeah.
it's, you know,
So you want these kids to be able to think.
I want them to be able to make decisions on their own. I
Yeah.
want to hear them coming up with their own ideas. I want them to be able to not only come up with an idea, but pursue a line of thinking. I want them to be able to revise their thinking as they go. You know, it's interesting, we talk so much about revision in writing, but in a certain way, skilled readers are revising their thinking as they read, right?
Right. And if you go back and reread something, you come away with a different impression often.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Which actually speaks to the need to actually teach kids a little bit about rereading. It's funny because that's one of the sort of ubiquitous phrases you hear, you know, in reading instruction is, you know, go back and reread.
Oh, yeah.
But here's the thing. Okay, I think there are so many different ways to reread.
Yeah.
My friend Carl Anderson, who's known for his work in conferring and writing, likes to say that telling a child to add detail in a piece of writing is among the least detailed things you can tell them, because there's so many different types of detail and ways to do that, right?
Right.
Similarly, I think if you tell a kid to go back and reread,
No, when I was thinking reread, it's as an adult that you go
Yeah.
back and read something you read 20 years ago.
okay,
That's what I
yeah,
meant. Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking of it more in terms of
Right.
monitoring for meaning.
Yeah.
If you don't get it or you
Yeah.
space out as you read, you know.
So how is your theory accepted?
Well, it depends on the school. I think it goes back to what we were talking about earlier about how much you trust your teachers and how much you're willing to rely on the professionalism of teachers, because I think a lot of schools, especially schools that are in trouble, you know, with low test scores or who've been cited by the state, you know, as being in trouble, are frightened of programs that aren't quote unquote teacher proof, right? You know, to just say, I'm relying on this teacher's judgment. And two, you know, the work that children will do with this kind of approach isn't as easy to assess, right?
Right.
It's hard to have a
Right.
common rubric
Right.
if every kid is
Is a
coming
little-
up with some different idea and pursuing it in a slightly different way, right? So that relies on teacher professionalism and ingenuity.
So do you think your program is not compatible with the New York City school system?
Well, first of all, I hesitate to call it a program. I don't. It's an approach, and I want to be really clear, because I'm not suggesting when I say this that the other type of instruction, that, you know, that the end year expectations for fourth grade or sixth grade or second grade are unimportant.
Right.
I'm just looking for some balance, right? I mean, I'll go further and just say that if you were a third grade teacher and your kids don't know the third grade stuff at the end of the year, you haven't done your job, right? So that we know, let's just accept that. But what I often say when I'm working with teachers or doing workshops, speaking at conferences is, look, let's get this out of the way. Your job is to teach the third grade stuff. Not saying you shouldn't, but that's not what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to talk about this other type of education that I think needs to balance that, right?
Yeah.
And frankly, if you never give kids time to develop their own lines of thinking, how do you really know that they learned what you taught them with the other instruction, right? Until you see them independently using it. I want kids to be comprehension decision makers, not comprehension rule followers.
Certainly makes them better citizens.
Well, that depends on which party you belong to, I suppose, but yeah.
Well, I mean, talking about that, Donald Trump's plan is to take something like $54 billion out of the Department of Education budget and put it to vouchers.
Yeah.
Which includes the broad range of schools, whether they're religious schools or charter schools or public schools. And we know that's not the way to do it, right?
Yeah, well, you're taking the resources away from schools, and I suppose, you know, parent education is another issue.
Now, that's an important question, because people will say, well, it's the background, the family, that has an impact on the child's ability to learn to read and write and all their literacy or comprehension. I'm sure that has some impact, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do we...
Address that?
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. There's a brilliant guy, Pedro Noguera, who out of NYU, who has done a lot of work around this. He has a great book called The Trouble with Black Boys, and about the trouble with black boys. It's about the achievement gap, and what we began by talking about. And there's no getting around that, a child's home environment and history has a huge impact on how they do in school. And what Pedro talks about is this vision of making schools, particularly schools in poorer neighborhoods, more than just schools, but setting them up almost as community centers, so that there's stuff going on after school.
Had that up in Harlem, right?
The Children's Zone, Jeffrey Canada has done some
of that work.
Stuff around that, yeah.
But it has to be more.
Well, I have mixed feelings about
part of the system.
Yeah, I mean, yes, because the whole charter thing, there's a lot to say about the whole charter movement and how it's been implemented in New York. Charter schools by definition are simply, someone had an idea for a particular approach and they got a charter, or they became certified to do it their way. So by definition, there's nothing wrong with the idea of a charter school, but the way that it's been implemented in New York, first of all, there's all sorts of controversy over the fact that they're underwritten by corporations, and and the way that it's panned out is they kind of live and die according to their test scores, which is controversy in the first place. But these schools claim to be do their entrance by lottery, and
we don't.
There's some
question.
There's some. I'm a little dubious as to how blind these lotteries are, but let's say, just for argument's sake, that they are a blind lottery, right? You still are approaching this, just to join the lottery.
Right.
You have to read the information, you have to show up at meetings, you have to sign contracts. So for parents who are working 2 or 3 jobs and don't have the time, they're already kind of skimmed off, the pool. And then, as has been widely reported, there's the issue of what happens when kids get into the charter school and they have behavioral issues or learning issues. They are often counseled out. And I know, many charter school advocates and representatives have denied this vehemently, but I'm here to tell you that when I worked for the DOE, I sat in at least a half a dozen meetings in principals' offices with heartbroken parents of charter school kids, often parents with limited English. Their perception was their child was being thrown out of the school. Now, what was actually happening, and I think how the charter schools defend themselves, to me it's a little reprehensible, but sorry, but is they're counseling them out. So the language they'll use is we think that Johnny might not be a good fit. You might want to consider some other place, right?
Yeah.
But effectively, what they're doing is counseling them out, and and if you've got a mom, again working 2 jobs, by the 8th time they're called at work and told you have to come and get him. Remember, you signed the contract about behavior.
Yes.
You're creating an untenable situation. I've often, joked, we look at the test scores of the charter schools compared to the public schools in the same neighborhood. Let's flip the populations and then see how they do. Yeah.
That would be interesting.
Yeah, right.
So in other words, we really need a defense budget for education.
That's a great way of putting it, yeah. Let's run that by Donald Trump.
Okay, yes. I mean, because you're saying it is a holistic kind of thing. It is everything.
Yeah, well, you need to teach teachers to think. You need to teach students to think. So
how long do we think that we're going to let this continue? I guess we're not going to see the change in the near future, but it certainly needs a drive, doesn't it? To have, and there's nothing wrong with national standards.
No, I think
it's very important.
Hypothetically, they're a really good idea.
Yeah.
Again, it's just how they're implemented.
Yeah.
The Common Core, again, like I said, there are aspects of it that I think are brilliant, actually, but again, it's how it's used, and also a little bit the question of emphasis. The standards are a lot about, what is the author saying, what's there on the page, appropriately, right? You need some accountability to the text. But, what some critics of the Common Core say, or they'll jokingly refer to them as the "who cares what you think" standards, because there's very little emphasis on interpretation or coming up with your own idea about the text. You should just be able to say what's the author's intention, what's the author's the author's meaning or angle. And one of my favorite quotes actually is by Samuel Beckett, who after Waiting for Godot came out, the play, of course, they wait for the entire first act for Godot to come, he doesn't show up. Second act, they wait again, he still doesn't come. So they said, "Mr. Beckett, Godot never arrives, what does it mean?" And Beckett famously said, "I did my work, I wrote the play, it's your work to give it meaning."
Oh, that's so interesting.
And that's kind of my view. I feel like, yes, you need to know what the author's intention was, but you also should be able to come up with your own idea about it. I think this is seen as a dangerous approach in some circles.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And it's also with the administrators misunderstanding also.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I think, to their credit, I was a principal, and I am a great supporter of school principals. It's a very hard job, and it's especially a hard job if you are the principal of a school that's struggling and serving a poor demographic. You've got the city, the state breathing down your neck to get those test scores up. So can you afford to spend the time it takes to train your teachers to be decision makers and have kids doing different kinds of work that's hard to assess with a common bar? My experience is that schools that really go deeply into this work, in those places, the test scores go up over time.
We've come to the end of this program. So I'm glad that you're traveling around the world, but I wish you would travel more around the country and really bring your theories and your viewpoint, because it's very exciting.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Dan Feigelson.
Thank you, Ronnie Eldridge.
We at CUNY TV always like to hear from our viewers. So if you have any subjects you'd like to explore or people you'd like to hear, please let us know. Write to us at CUNY TV, 365 Fifth Avenue, New York, New York, 10016, or go to our website, cuny.tv, and click on Contact Us. We look forward to hearing from you.